Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are plunging into, well, one of the most complex, most deliberately confusing corners of the financial world. We're talking about the middle stage of money laundering, known as layering.
That crucial, often messy middle part.
Exactly. You know, the basic idea: criminals need to make dirty money look clean. First, they get into the system, that's placement. Then they hide where it came from. And that hiding part, that's layering. It's often described as the most sophisticated and resource-intensive phase of the whole process.
Takes a lot of planning, a lot of effort.
Right. Our guide for this deep dive comes from FinCrime Intelligence, a platform that really zeroes in on financial crime stuff. We're going to use their material to unpack exactly what layering involves, what makes it so, well, devilishly hard to spot, and what institutions are up against when trying to fight it. Okay, let's unpack this and see what this deep dive into the source material tells us.
All right, so FinCrime Intelligence defines layering pretty clearly. It's the phase where money launderers build these complex layers of financial transactions. The fundamental goal here really is just to obscure the origin and the ownership of illicit funds, make it muddy.
So it's not just one or two hops for the money.
Oh, no. It's about creating such a tangled web of transactions, often across different institutions, different countries,
Yeah.
that it becomes incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, to follow that trail back to the original crime. That they're trying to make the money just sort of dissolve into the legitimate financial system.
Maximum confusion, maximum distance. That's the game plan for the criminal.
Mhm.
So what does the source material say are the specific actions, the techniques they use to build this complex web? How do they actually, create that distance?
Yeah, the material from FinCrime Intelligence outlines several key actions. They'll move money between multiple accounts, for starters, often using things like shell companies or offshore entities,
Classic tools.
the usual suspects. Right. They might also purchase and then quickly resell assets, financial instruments, luxury goods, you name it. Converting funds into cryptocurrency or other digital assets is increasingly common too. And sometimes it's just a series of international wire transfers or complex foreign exchange trades designed to look legitimate but really just move the money around.
Okay, that gives us the broad strokes. But what about the specific common techniques that FinCrime Intelligence calls out? What are the ones investigators are really seeing used most often in this layering phase? This is where it gets really interesting.
This is where they get creative. The source really dives into the common methods here. One is the heavy use of wire transfers, specifically targeting foreign jurisdictions, especially places with, shall we say, weaker AML regulations.
Exploiting the gaps.
Precisely. Another is leveraging complex corporate structures. Think nominee directors, trusts, layers upon layers of front companies, all to hide the true beneficial owner.
Making it impossible to see who's really behind it all.
Exactly. They also talk about the rapid movement of funds across various accounts, different currencies. The source actually uses the term velocity for this.
Velocity. Okay, so not just moving money, but moving it fast and repeatedly.
Yes, that speed, that churn, it can make it really hard for traditional systems to keep up and connect the dots, especially when combined with other tactics.
Gotcha. What else?
Another really sophisticated technique mentioned is trade-based money laundering, or TBML. This involves using things like mispriced goods, completely false invoices, or manipulating import-export documents. Basically, using the cover of legitimate international trade to move value across borders. It's powerful because it can blend into these huge volumes of global commerce.
Wow. Hiding in plain sight within trade flows.
It's effective. Then there's casino-based layering. The source describes this one. It's fascinating. You walk into a casino with dirty cash, buy chips, maybe place a few minimal bets just to make it look like you gambled.
Just enough to get some activity on record?
Right. And then you cash out the chips. Suddenly the money looks like gambling winnings. They might even cash out under a different name sometimes.
Clever. And what about digital assets? You mentioned crypto earlier.
Yes, the digital space is huge now. The source notes converting fiat currency regular money into crypto. They might use peer-to-peer platforms or tools called mixers or tumblers or privacy coins. All these are designed to provide pseudonymity. Not quite anonymity, but close enough to make tracing significantly harder than with traditional bank transfers.
Wow. So it's a whole arsenal, isn't it? Leveraging global trade, corporate secrecy,
Yeah.
the sheer speed of finance, the pseudo-anonymity of digital assets. It sounds like they're specifically timing and structuring all this to just fly under the radar of standard detection systems.
Precisely. These aren't random acts. They're very much orchestrated strategies, planned moves.
Which leads us to the next big question.
Why it's so hard to spot.
Exactly. With all that complexity, you can see why layering is such a nightmare for compliance teams and investigators. What does the source say are the main reasons it's so tough?
Well, the source gives some really clear reasons. First off, the transactions themselves often look legitimate on the surface. They might even have fabricated documents to back them up. Or they're just standard transaction types, like a wire transfer, but done repeatedly, circuitously, and sometimes routed through perfectly legitimate, regulated financial institutions.
So they use the system against itself.
In a way, yes. Second big reason, the trail gets fragmented. It's scattered across multiple financial institutions. Money goes from Bank A to Bank B, then maybe to Brokerage C, then pops up in Crypto Exchange D. Each place only sees one little piece of the puzzle.
Right. No single institution has the full picture.
Correct. Third, they use intermediaries and third parties, nominees, lawyers, accountants sometimes, or they operate through high-volume trading platforms. All of this further obscures the identity of the actual person pulling the strings.
Adding more layers of separation.
Exactly. Then you add geographic dispersion, money flitting across countries with different AML rules, different levels of enforcement. That makes cross-border cooperation really challenging. Investigators hit roadblocks.
Jurisdictional hurdles.
Definitely. And finally, as we touched on, crypto assets and these decentralized platforms, they introduce that layer of pseudonymity, which really complicates the forensic work needed to trace funds back to a source.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, the core insight here, according to FinCrime Intelligence, is that layering works because it blends in. It mimics legitimate activity, deliberately scatters the transaction trail far and wide, and exploits geographical and technological boundaries. It's not about one big flashing red light, but maybe thousands of smaller, seemingly normal actions that are just incredibly hard to connect.
That's exactly it. You put it well. It's
Yeah.
like death by a thousand cuts for the investigator trying to piece it all back together. Criminals are actively exploiting any weakness they can find in regulations, in due diligence processes, even, as the source points out, the internal silos that can exist within big financial institutions.
Yeah.
Where different departments don't always share information effectively, preventing that complete view of customer activity.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so given how challenging, how sneaky this phase is,
Yeah.
what are financial institutions and regulators actually doing about it? What kind of defenses are being built against these sophisticated layering techniques?
Well, the FinCrime intelligence material highlights that the old ways aren't enough. Static rules-based systems like just flagging transactions over $10,000, they miss too much.
Too easy to game the system that way.
Right, so institutions are deploying more advanced tools. AI-driven transaction monitoring systems are becoming key. These go beyond simple thresholds. They're designed to look for complex patterns, anomalies, behaviors that might indicate layering, even if individual transactions look okay.
So looking for the story the transactions tell, not just the individual words.
That's a good way to put it. Network and link analysis is also becoming crucial. This isn't just looking at transaction A in isolation, it's mapping the whole web. Who is connected to whom? Which accounts are interacting? What's the relationship between all the parties involved in a whole series of transactions?
Seeing the forest, not just the trees.
Exactly. Customer behavior profiling is also critical. You need a baseline. What's normal for this particular customer? Then you look for deviations. Does this sudden series of rapid international transfers or sudden engagement with high-risk sectors significantly deviate from their expected activity?
Spotting things that are out of character.
Precisely. Geolocation and time-based analysis can help too. Flagging unusual activity like funds flowing between distant countries with no clear business rationale or transactions happening consistently outside normal business hours, little red flags that add up.
And the source emphasizes enhanced due diligence EDD right, particularly on high-risk clients, sectors, or regions. It sounds like they're saying you really need to dig much deeper when the potential for layering seems higher based on risk factors.
Absolutely. Standard due diligence isn't enough for high-risk scenarios. You need to ask more questions, get more documents, understand the why behind the activity much better.
And putting this all together, the need for collaboration seems vital, not just between banks, but internally. Getting departments like compliance, fraud, cybersecurity, legal, all talking to each other to get that holistic view the source mentions, that seems absolutely critical.
It is. No single department or system is likely to see the whole picture on its own. Piecing together the clues requires breaking down those internal silos that, frankly, the criminals are counting on existing.
Okay? And how does all this detection effort connect to the bigger regulatory picture?
Well, the source reminds us of the big global AML frameworks that are in place. Things like the FATF recommendations, that's the Financial Action Task Force. Then you have the EU AML directives, the Bank Secrecy Act, BSA in the US. These aren't just suggestions.
They have teeth.
They absolutely do. They impose serious requirements on financial institutions. Institutions must identify and report transactions that might indicate layering. And the source makes a point of mentioning this includes transactions even if they are small in value, if they look suspicious in context. It's not just about big sums.
So context is everything.
Completely. They need to keep detailed records of transactions, customer interactions. They need to file suspicious activity reports, SARs, when activity points towards attempts to disguise funds. And importantly, they need to train their staff. People on the front lines need to be able to spot potential indicators that velocity we talked about, unexplained complexity, weird movements through high-risk areas.
And the stakes for institutions, if they drop the ball on this, they're incredibly high, right?
hmm
FinCrime intelligence notes it can lead to massive regulatory penalties, huge reputational damage, even potential criminal liability for the institution or individuals.
Absolutely. The consequences can be severe, which really highlights the strategic importance of getting layering detection right. The source describes it as the critical middle step because it's where that criminal intent, the effort to hide, is most actively happening and most easily concealed if you're not looking properly. If a financial institution can effectively detect and investigate activity at this stage, well, it's a strong indicator of a mature AML program, of having robust risk controls in place.
It shows they're serious about it.
Exactly. And the FinCrime intelligence material is very clear on this point. As criminal techniques continue to evolve, especially in digital finance, the defenses have to keep evolving too. Surveillance capabilities, investigative expertise, international cooperation, they simply must keep pace. It's a constantly moving target, an ongoing battle.
So we've really taken a deep dive today into the layering phase of money laundering, using those insights from FinCrime intelligence as our map. We've seen what it is, explored the incredibly complex, sometimes frankly ingenious techniques criminals use. We've understood why it's such a massive challenge for institutions to detect, and looked at the advanced measures being deployed to try and fight back.
It's quite the landscape.
It really is. So what does all this mean for you, listening? It means understanding layering gives you a real sense of the sophistication of modern financial crime. It's definitely not just bags of cash under the mattress anymore. It's these intricate global webs of transactions designed specifically to confuse and conceal. And it highlights this constant, evolving arms race between criminals finding new ways and the regulators and institutions trying to protect the integrity of the financial system. It really shows us the critical need for vigilance and ever smarter defenses.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Drawing from that source, emphasis on evolution. Given how criminals constantly adapt their layering techniques, particularly as we discussed in digital finance, what does that tell us about the future of this hidden financial arms race? What new techniques might be just around the corner, and how will the defenses need to adapt next to even stand a chance?
That is something certainly worth considering. Thanks for exploring this complex topic with us on the Deep Dive.